Subscribe to Chug Chow wherever you get your podcast or visit chugandchow.com.
Welcome to Chug Chow, the podcast based on my book, Chug Chow, the Tattooed Traveler's 50 Favorite Dive Bars and Food Joints Across America. I am Todd Newton. Thank you very much for making me a part of your day. I appreciate it. This is the podcast that uncovers those special places, places that make road trips legendary. The mom and pop diners, the quirky roadside stands, the dive bars with the best jukebox in 3 counties, and the family-owned spots that have been serving up magic for generations. You won't find these places in your typical travel guide, but trust me, they're the ones that you'll be talking about years from now. You can see videos of my visits to many of these places, as well as order your copy of the book Chug Chow at chugandchow.com. chugandchow.com. And as we begin this episode, I do hope you will subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to us, as I take you to the desert oasis of Indio, California, nestled in the heart of the Coachella Valley, about 125 miles east of Los Angeles. You might know Indio as the home of the famous Coachella Music Festival, where celebrities and influencers flock every spring to see and be seen among the palm trees and desert backdrop. But long before Coachella put this desert town on the map, Indio was already famous for something much sweeter and far more enduring. Indio sits in the Sonoran Desert, where the intense heat and abundant sunshine create the perfect growing conditions for one very special crop. The city has earned the nickname City of Festivals, but it's also known as the date capital of America. That's right, dates. Those chewy, candy-like fruits that most Americans only encounter during the holidays, if at all. The Coachella Valley produces about 95% of America's dates, and Indio is right at the center of it all. Which brings us to today's destination, Shields Date Garden. This is a true American treasure that's been family-owned and operated since 1924. A century of date-growing tradition in the same family. Floyd and Bess Shields started this operation with just a dream and a few date palm shoots. And today, their great-grandchildren are still running the show. Now, before we dive into the Shields story, let's talk about dates themselves, because before I started looking into this episode, I, like many of you, thought of the sticky, overly sweet things that you might find in a fruitcake. Real dates, fresh dates, are nothing like that. These fruits are nature's candy with a complex sweetness that ranges from honey-like to caramel-rich, depending on the variety. They are packed with fiber, potassium, and antioxidants, and they've been sustaining desert dwellers for thousands of years. The date palm is actually called the tree of life in Middle Eastern cultures, and for good reason. Every part of the tree can be used. The fruit for food, the sap can be used for wine, the leaves for shelter and basketry. A single date palm can live and produce fruit for over 100 years, which makes them incredibly valuable in desert climates. The ancient Arabs had a saying, "A date palm must have its feet in water and its head in the fires of heaven." Basically, they need their roots in moisture, but their crowns in the blazing sun, which perfectly describes the Coachella Valley. What makes Shields Date Garden so special isn't just their premium dates, though those Medjools are legendary. It's the complete experience they've created around the ancient fruit. Picture this, all right? You're driving through the desert on Highway 111 there, and suddenly you see this lush oasis of towering date palms. You pull into what really looks like a mirage, a cool, shaded grove where the temperature drops 20 degrees the moment you step out of your car. The Shields family didn't just grow dates, they created an entire world around them. They built a cafe, which is where I was introduced to my very first date shake. There's a huge gift shop, and they even produced their own romantic short film about date cultivation that became a quirky roadside attraction in its own right. For nearly a century, they've been welcoming travelers, educating them about dates, and sending them back on the road with bags full of nature's sweetest treats. But the business encountered some financial trouble in 2004 and almost had to close its doors until Heather Rahman and her husband stepped in. To quote Heather, she said, "We had information given to us that Shields Date Garden was going to close. It was something that was really near and dear to our hearts to try to make it not close because it was the last surviving date shop on Highway 111. Well, she and her husband took over the business. He has an agricultural finance degree. She has a degree in business marketing, making them the perfect fit to revive and continue operating Shields Date Garden. Heather joins us now here on Chug Chow. And Heather, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me because I know you're about ready to go into your harvest season, and that's got to be a busy time of year for you, huh?
It is, and it's an exciting time of year for us. All of us in the date industry always are grateful for the following harvest, and we're also grateful for the heat that comes before it because the dates need about 100 days of 100 degrees in order for them to thrive. So unlike some people who try to escape the heat, we actually rely on it. So we're very excited. Well,
let's talk a little bit about the dates. I tried my best to give a little background on it. I'm certainly no date expert compared to you. I've had about 20 date shakes in my life, and that's the extent of my expertise. Can you give us a little background on the fruit?
Yes, it is. It is a dried fruit. It's high in potassium. It's high in antioxidants. It's high in sugar, but the nice thing about the type of sugar that derives from a date is that it is not processed. It's a natural sugar, and so the body does tend to utilize that for energy as opposed to, say, fat cells and things like that. So not to get too much into the chemistry of it, different dates, for the most part, all house the same antioxidants, potassium. They're actually higher than a banana in potassium. And yet there is one particular variety that we have here that is called a Kadrai, and that one metabolizes a little bit slowly for individuals that are wanting to, say, watch their sugar intake. So not all dates are the same. The Barhi date, which is the yellow one, is the first date that we'll harvest, and it's as yellow as a banana, and that's the only date that can actually be harvested before it's truly ripened on the tree. So we call that the celebratory date, and we're always very excited to have that.
Yeah, and as much as we're talking about the harvesting and the growing of these dates, Shields Date Garden is much more than just a garden or a farm or a crop, if you will. Can you give us a little history? Because it's really become a very popular roadside attraction for families for over 100 years now.
Well, the original location for the gardens is actually where Mr. Shields himself used to have the talks that he would house with different individuals. Once a day he would go out and talk to people about the dates and how they are cultivated and the horticulture of them, also the nutrition. And it wasn't until then, in 1951, when Mr. Shields decided to come up with his infamous movie, The Romance and Sex Life of the Date. He found that he just really needed to reach the public and explain to them how the relationship of the female trees and the male trees and how the horticulture is done and why they can only be grown in a desert climate. So Mr. Shields came out with that. We love the name. It's been infamous. But the gardens themselves, we started the gardens really by happenstance. The actual field where Mr. Shields used to have some of his blonde date starts is where the garden is now. We need a reservoir, which is our water that goes from the reservoir to the dates, back down into the ground, and then from the reservoir. So it's just this continuous cycle. We farm organically. So when you have this big reservoir, we thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a park surrounding this reservoir where people could enjoy the different types of agriculture that we have here on property.
And it's a lovely stroll. The film that you mentioned, The Romance and Sex Life of a Date, shows on a continuous loop in the theater there at Shields Date Garden. And it's interesting to watch because in 1951, when that came out, it must have been so shocking. And now it's just like, okay, well, watch a few minutes of this before I go stroll the gardens, which is definitely something you want to take the time to do because it is a breathtaking walk while you enjoy your date snack or your date shake, especially if you're a person of faith. There are statues, sculptures of the life of Christ placed around the garden. And if you are a believer, this is a really interesting walk because the climate there in Indio, California is very similar to the climate in Jerusalem. So one would have to make the assumption that dates played an important part in that era of history, right?
Dates were a staple going all the way back to the Aztecian Indians and beyond. Dates have such a long history in our world as being a staple in diets that we just it made sense for us to bring the statues here for everyone to enjoy from all walks of faith, but also understand the story of maybe a little bit more of what type of atmosphere Jesus would have been strolling through and what he might have been eating. And so it's kind of like our mini Mecca, if you might.
Yeah. How big is the garden there?
It's approximately 8 acres.
Yeah, it's pretty expansive, as is your gift shop, which one would expect for any roadside attraction that's been around so long. You want to take home a little souvenir. I told you off air that I have a Shields Date Garden magnet on my refrigerator. I think anyone would be surprised to learn all the different things you can do with a date. Besides the candies and the date shake, what are some of the top sellers there in the gift shop? What do people take home with them?
Well, one of the things that we love about people today is we've noticed that people have become foodies. There's a lot of food channels. There's people like yourself who go and find new experiences in food. Food is such an exciting thing. And yet more people we seem to think that they're cooking too. So we love this new generation of individuals that are really becoming their own personal chefs in their kitchen. And so every year it's our goal to come out with something and different recipes and different products that are healthy and right from farm to table that individuals can then take home from Shields. So we have everything from our date syrups that you can make infusions with. We have our date rubs where you can do different meats and marinades. We, of course, then have our dates themselves, which you can make your farm-to-table salads. We have the different recipes for things like date burgers. Date pancake mix, the list goes on and on. One of the things that we tried really hard to do this year is we are expanding our recipe website. And so we have been busy baking and cooking all summer long, making sure that we can try to pass on all the goodness of dates, the nutrition, and the excitement of using them in your kitchen as a sugar supplement, as a sugar alternative, and just simply as a really good taste.
And that website is shieldsdategarden.com, shieldsdategarden.com, SHIELDS, dategarden.com. Let's switch from the gift shop, Heather, over to the cafe, which has a really cool, kind of an old school Route 66 Americana diner vibe to it. And the highlight of the menu there at the cafe is, without question, the date shake. Scrumptious. And of course, I only feature places on this podcast and in the book that I really enjoy. So you're never going to hear me say something was awful, but the date shake was an absolute home run. To someone who's never sucked a date shake through a straw, how do you describe the flavor of it?
Because we utilize one particular date for our shake, which is called the blonde date, which is what has been derived from what Mr. Shields invented, the blonde dry date, and he calls it the blonde crystal. And the crystals are something that have a caramely aftertaste. So when you follow the recipe to make a date shake, you want to start with the date crystals, and you'll add your water, and you'll stir it up until it becomes almost like the same consistency as peanut butter. And then that is your start. And you can put that in your protein shake, but you can also add it to ice cream and make your own date shake. But the way I describe it is it has a caramely aftertaste. Now, some people do, they taste hints of chocolate. And of course, everybody's taste buds are a little bit different, but it truly does have this unique taste of that undertone of caramel and for some chocolate. So it's quite delicious.
So good. A date shake. Costs you about $10, worth every penny of it. Just out of curiosity, how long does the harvest season last? I know it's getting ready to start here pretty soon. What's the stretch for something like that?
Typically, we start with some of the, like I said earlier, the barhi date is our first date to be harvested. And then from there, we go into our Medjool crop. And from there, we start doing some of the other date crops like the Deglet Nors. Of course, pending weather, the harvest this year is looking as though it might come early because we've had such hot weather. And so we're looking at about starting here in a few weeks. And we would most likely end up with harvest by the end of October, typically about 3 months. It's very labor intensive. Each tree has to be climbed 7 times to do anything from harvesting to bagging to pollinating to thinning. And so it is it's something that we really celebrate when we're on that final journey to get the harvest, for sure.
I would imagine so. That is definitely cause for celebration. I have a newfound respect, and believe me, I'll be celebrating each time I take a sip of a date shake, knowing that you've been climbing up and down that tree 7 times.
I physically don't do it. We have wonderful palmeros who are trained, and of course they use man lifts, but they work so hard, and we adore them. So actually everybody in the industry works very hard, and it's definitely a team effort.
Heather Rahman, thank you so much for your time, and not only for your time, but for this masterclass in dates. I feel like an expert now, so the next time I stroll through, I will be a trained professional, and I look forward to seeing you all soon there at Shields Date Garden.
That would be fabulous, and congratulations on your book. I hope that it's a great success.
I appreciate that, Heather. Thank you again.
Take care.
All right, that's a wrap on our sweet journey to Shields Date Garden in Indio, California. From Floyd and Bess Shields' desert dream in 1924 to Heather Rahman's heroic rescue mission in 2004, this oasis proves that the best roadside treasures are worth saving. Next time you're cruising Highway 111, pull over for that legendary date shake and catch the romance and sex life of the date. Because where else can you get premium fruit, quirky entertainment, and a century of family history all in one stop, right? And if you haven't already ordered your copy of my book, CHUG CHOW, The Tattooed Traveler's 50 Favorite Dive Bars and Food Joints Across America, well, that is where this all started. And for every copy sold, we are happy to provide 10 meals to families experiencing food insecurity, thanks to our partnerships with local food banks across the country. You can get your copy of the book on Amazon or at chugandchow.com. Pick one up for yourself and one for every foodie in your life. Let's make a difference together. Until we meet again a little further on down the road, I'm Todd Newton. Travel safely.
Chug Chow is produced by the host with the most LLC. All rights reserved.